Alright everyone, now we have to talk about Joe Biden and Zelensky and the Ukraine kerfuffle currently going on. No, I don't mean the Russians continuing to pound things or the Ukrainians getting more missiles and tanks and Switzerland officially remaining neutral by not sending legions of Leopard tanks, actually. Some people are saying that's a break with neutrality and a siding with Russia. I disagree. I think it's quite the opposite. If they were to send the tanks, they'd be siding with Ukraine. They're just saying, nope, well, the tanks are here. We're not going to, no, that's not going to happen, brah. Anyway, Biden has officially thrown Zelensky under the bus. At this particular time, it's beginning to become clear to people that the Ukrainians, while they have the ability to maintain much of their country, people in Kiev are going swimming right now. They do not have the ability to repulse the Russians in the eastern provinces that Russia was most clearly interested in taking in the first place. As such, Biden does not want to hitch his horse to this wagon completely. Send the aid, do a little bit of saber rattling, talk about how Putin is Hitler, basically, but doesn't want to be directly tied to the situation anymore. And thus, Biden has come out and said, well, I warned Zelensky. I knew that this was coming. I didn't say anything about it to the public, but I knew that the Russians were going to invade months before, and Zelensky didn't want to hear it. This is his own fault. The fact that you got invaded is your fault, Zelensky, because for months you watched the Russians amass on your border and didn't do anything. Now first, this is revisionism. The Ukrainians spent those months digging in. They were already doing that, so Biden, number one, is clearly wrong. Number two, Zelensky comes out and says, no, that never happened. Hey, Mr. Biden, I never said that. I was concerned about the situation. You're the one that was being a hodgepodge of confusion. Now, this creates an interesting little situation for people that are Biden fans. Most of them right now are flying the Ukrainian flag on Twitter. Are they going to side with Biden and start saying, well, those Ukrainians, really, ultimately, they're responsible for their own problems? Hey, I know that all of these arms dealers got a huge cut of that $40 billion that the U.S. taxpayers so kindly gave to them. But now it's time to settle back and let things settle themselves. Hail Joe Biden. Or are they more ideological? Have they absorbed the more Russia thing, the Russia bad thing so much that they'll say, hey, Biden, cut it out. Keep sending more arms to Zelensky. Yeah, we know that he just criticized you on the world stage after you effectively threw him under the bus. Who are you going to side with? Is the Ukrainian flag coming off the Twitter profile and being replaced by the pre-midterm DNC logo? Or are they going to stick with Zelensky and the people that they claim to love so much against the evil second rise of Adolf Hitler over in Moscow? It's not entirely clear which these people will choose, but you're going to have to. Ukraine effectively has an indefensible position on parts of its own border. They're capable, because they've been pumped full of weapons and they've militarized everyone and really dug in, they're possible of maintaining against the Russian assault for months and months to come. Russia at some point, simply because of the lopsidedness of weapon availability when all of NATO is pumping them full of steroids, probably no longer has the ability to wage full-on mechanized warfare in the whole Ukraine. They're going to have to focus on the eastern provinces. By the way, the one victory that the Ukrainians could have is to hold out elsewhere long enough so that the Russians no longer have any extra forces to distract them, and Ukrainians begin making inroads in the east. The problem being a significant proportion of the population, number one, speaks Russian, it's the majority. Number two, doesn't have a problem with Russia occupying them, thinks of themselves already as independent. And number three, there are just as many militants and partisans that fight on the Russian side in those regions. Not elsewhere in Ukraine, but certainly in those regions. Biden apparently has finally come to the realization that this is going to be a very long-term conflict. It's going to continue to be messy. There will continue to be non-stop war propaganda from all sides. It will be expensive, and at some point the U.S. doesn't even have anything else to grift. You know, you're sending all your weapons to a foreign country. At some point, you got to say, hey, we need some weapons left for ourselves. We sent $40 billion of money and goods over to Ukraine in a massively inflationary economy while people can't even find baby formula. Biden looked, obviously, over the last month or so at internal polling and said, shit, that wasn't that popular. Maybe that's why my approval keeps dropping. Maybe it's not just the economy, maybe it's also the bad decisions I make pertinent to the economy. And so he's throttling back on the Ukraine thing, or so it seems. Biden has held up Zelensky as effectively nothing shy of being like Jesus Christ or Mahatma Gandhi or something. He's near worshipped by the legacy media. And yet Biden thought it prudent. And this could just be the ineptitude of the asterisk administration's poor handling of messaging, or it could have been more pointed. I think the latter. I think it was based on interior polling. He said Zelensky didn't care. He didn't want to listen to me. He wanted to do his own thing. At what point did Biden point this out since the invasion began? It's very interesting that all of a sudden when we start getting word that the Russians are in it for the long haul, it's clear they're not just magically going to go away because they've taken casualties. All of a sudden, right after the polling begins to drop, that's when Biden decides to say this. Maybe it's a prelude to throttling back U.S. involvement in the region to ease tensions. Maybe going into the midterms by having something that's a single rocket launch away from the next world war is not a good position to be in. And maybe he's hoping, hey, there's some months till midterms. We'll do what we did with COVID. We'll quietly retire the Ukraine thing, and we'll focus on January 6th and gun control, and that'll be our platform for the midterms. I think it's all completely strategic. It shows you the fair-weathered friend status of the Biden administration towards the Ukrainians, which was always predictable to people who didn't have Russia derangement syndrome or Trump derangement syndrome. Biden is like this. He's a career politician. He will stab a person in the back for a penny. He's the kind of person that's been doing that in the Senate. He did that in the Senate for like 35 years, dude. He was always known as this kind of scumbag. Robin Williams had a bit on the motherfucker. What more need be said? So link in the description archived, of course. You can read about it yourself. Very interesting, because Zelensky doesn't recall having told you that, Joey. Are all of the people that worship Zelensky therefore going to believe him and say, well, Biden really screwed up on this one? Man, you're bad-mouthing our ally against the evil Russians. Or are they going to default to simply saying, well, Biden, he misrecalled events. Is Biden going to come out and do damage control now and say, well, I had a brain fart. It wasn't actually Zelensky. It was a different the Ukrainian general that I was talking about. I'm sorry, Zelensky. I'm really, really sorry for that. Here, have some more Stinger missiles. That's about all. Peace out.